Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing my final update video on my PC build 2020. Now if you haven't seen before, do check out my PC build video where I basically scrap my old PC and replace it with some new parts. Those new parts are the Intel Core i9-9900K, which basically replaced my old Intel Core i7-3770K. Now, my trusty i7 was fantastic, however coming to the Core i9 has been very much a breeze, I must say, in a lot of respects. Now, I did a variety of different benchmarks before I shifted over in order just to compare what the new generation of chip offers versus the old generation chip. Now, you'll be able to see via the graph over here that in every single benchmark the Core i9 comes out on top. Now, I should bear in mind that the Core i9 is running at 4.7 GHz across all cores. And essentially it's not really considered an overclock. However, if you're interested in overclocking, be sure to check out my other video, which I'll link down in the description below as well, for you guys just to understand a little bit of the overclocking between the Core i9 and the benefits, or maybe if there are any benefits of actually overclocking. So be sure to check out that video. Now, a lot has changed versus the older days, but if I took a non-overclocked Core i7, then you'd find that the results would have been very much drastically more different. The reason why the numbers are very much more closer together than you would actually expect, even though a generation of chips, I mean we're talking a third generation of chip of Intel's Core i7 versus 9th generation Core i9, from a quad core to a 8-core processor, you'd think there's almost like a massive jump in difference, and that's because my Core i7 was pretty well overclocked, whereas my Core i9 I didn't really feel the need to overclock it that much. While all of this might be good in terms of benchmarks, the thing is, for me, it's actually real-world usage. And it's not only about the Core i9. I've got different components in there, from the RAM running at DDR4 now, and from the motherboard being on the more later generation chipset, and also to the memory, as in the storage component, which is basically a PCIe SSD. So it's no longer using a SATA-based SSD. Even though I've still got SATA-based SSD and even a HDD still on my PC, they're my secondary drive rather than my primary drive. So on the whole, what does it actually mean? Well, my faster based SSD means that I've got slightly faster boot times and shut-off times. Now that doesn't really concern me, but what does really concern me is the fact that when I'm transferring files to and from different drives, or even copying files in from an external drive into my primary storage unit, which is the PCIe based SSD, it's ridiculously fast, and those speeds that you'll now see posted aren't lying. They are really ridiculously fast, and that's one massive benefit that I've seen. So elsewhere, it's also important for me that I had faster rendering times, and that was because of Sony Vegas. And here I found that the Core i9 really was a lot faster, to the point where it was 2/3 faster than my Core i7. Something that the benchmarks don't really show, whilst when it came to real world usage, the Sony Vegas really benefited from using those 8 cores and 16 threads, which is ridiculous to think when I came from 4 and 8 threads. So here the i7 was a lot slower at rendering, but it's not to say it was bad, it was just slower. Now another big element for me is gaming, and here I really wanted to see if a latest generation processor, which is deemed the best for gaming, was really that much better than my Core i7. In all honesty and truthfully, I didn't see any differences when I was playing at 1080p or 1440p at 144 Hz. I still had very consistent frame rates, and that's purely due to the fact that I've got a fantastic graphics card with the RTX 2080 Super. The 2080 Super didn't really benefit from the processor being better, but it did benefit from the motherboard supporting the latest generation PCIe Express lane speeds. So over here I got a slightly better transfer between the GPU and the motherboard and the processor, and they all synchronized really well in harmony. Whilst with the i7, when I was pushing out 4K and I'm trying to push 120 Hz at 4K, that's when I started seeing a little bit of stuttering. It's not the first time I'd seen it, and it's not something that I'd thought too much about, but when I came to the Core i9 system, I suddenly saw it was a lot more fluid when it was operating at a higher resolution. So for most people who are running at 1080p or 1440p, I don't think you'll see a massive difference coming from an older generation chipset to a newer generation chipset. However, again, your mileage may vary depending on the FPS you're pushing, and also in terms of how you're actually running your PC with what graphics card. Now, another point I do want to make is, and again this will seem quite trivial to some people, is the fact that the Asus motherboard has built-in Wi-Fi. Now, the built-in Wi-Fi means that I don't need to have an external Wi-Fi card. And again, I know this will seem trivial, but back in 2012, I don't think a lot of boards or board manufacturers actually had built-in Wi-Fi. The built-in Wi-Fi works flawlessly. It means that I don't have to have an extra component within my PC or have to worry about that. Again, very trivial to some people, but the wireless card that I had in my old Core i7 system, which was a fantastic TP-Link, it required some weird drivers which essentially would enable 5 GHz frequencies. Without it, it just wouldn't work properly and usually would refer to the 2.4 GHz. It's a known problem. You can check on the Amazon reviews, and I was very much aware of this prior to purchasing the wireless card. But other than that, it was fantastic. With the wireless card that's built into the motherboard, I don't really have to worry about that, and it just works flawlessly. I haven't noticed any sort of lag when it came to gaming, and more so, it means that if I do have a sort of dropout with my Ethernet port, which has happened with my router, I can just resort to using the Wi-Fi without having to worry about compatibility issues again, due to the wireless card only supporting the 5 GHz frequency versus the older 2.4 GHz frequency. Oh, and I will definitely say that I have still not gotten used to RGB lights, at which point I still do leave them disabled on my PC because, well, one, I don't see them, and secondly, I still don't see the whole hype about having RGB lights. So there we have it. That is my experience with going from an old i7 PC build to a new Core i9 build. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you've made that transition as well, I'll be very much intrigued to know, to kind of like hear your thoughts. Again, a lot of the things I would have said, might seem trivial to a lot of people, but for me, as I use it on a daily basis, and I'm not using a PC as a benchmarking tool, I'm using it as my daily driver, all these little things actually do make a difference to me, and it all does add up. So there we go. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you give it a like, subscribe, favorite, share, all that good stuff. I do this all for free in my own spare time, so hopefully you appreciate that as well. I mean, right now it's 9:36 on a Sunday, and I'm choosing to shoot a video, let alone have to edit it afterwards. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care, and bye-bye.